Cue the music.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, our demo is going to be Tod Raines, our very own Tod Raines. He's going to be showing us how to do bud pots, which is a version of a weed pot, smaller, right?
Yeah, bud vase, yeah.
And I'm going to turn it over to Tod.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Did you turn it on? Okay. Well, thanks for having me again. I don't know if that's too loud now. Probably is. So yeah, I'm Tod Raines. I'm also the treasurer of the club, but I'm also a small business owner, and so I'll get the little commercial out of the way. I own a wood turning tool store. I've got some cards up here with a little coupon code for anybody that's here tonight, DAW 2018. Go to woodturningtoolstore.com, and for the next 2 weeks, 20% off your cart. So we sell Carter & Son tools, Jimmy Clue's mate tools, Jimmy Clue's handle adapters, and the Elio drive, which is a 3-prong drive center, teardrop style scraper cutters, and I think there's a couple DVDs. There's a few DVDs from Brian McAvoy on there. So take a look at the web store, shop if you so desire, just visit take a look around. I've also got newsletters, archived ones from the last 10 years that Brian McAvoy and Gord Langer own the company of the mailing list. And I'm creating a new one, so there's some project information on there that of projects I've done at home. I videotape these projects, and I've got a YouTube channel, so I'm doing YouTube as well. And so this will be up on YouTube on the DAW site, and I'm going to put on a camera here and do a point of view filming of what I do from this side, and I'll put that up on my site. I've done this once before last year, so I'll do it again. So it's a new camera, a new lens. We'll see how it works out. So with all the commercials out of the way, let's move on. Oh, somebody printed up some instruction sheets, which is nice. I didn't print any up, but it is up on the DAW website. So it's just a quick little short instructions on the project tonight. So let me, so that's just 18 steps, but you don't have to have that many. Anyway, yeah, May, it's pretty warm, but yeah. Okay, let me get my rig on here. So bear with me a second. This is kind of an interesting look, but yes, I do. Okay, there we go. I got a little lens on here to give me a better wide-angle view. So hopefully that, well, that just reset. Well, we'll continue. So this little weed pot, and I'll pass a couple around, take a look, is really a base. I've got little test tubes that I insert. You want to pass those around? That'd be great. And I'll keep one up here for show and tell. So, yeah. So I call it a bud vase because of you can use it with water using the test tube. So, if you got a little flower garden or something, you cut one off, you can put it in there, kind of like and put water in the little test tube, and away you go. So. Or you could use it dry as a weed pot. So whether it's a small bud vase or a weed pot, you know, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of cute, I think. My wife, when we were at SWAT last fall, was working the booth, and there was a gentleman working on, God, I forget the name of the outfit. English gentleman at the, I don't know if it's Chuck's Plus, I think it was, George Hatfield, and he came over, and my wife was over there visiting him, and he came back over about an hour later and gave her one of these. And so that's how I got the design, and so I looked at it. This one is the one that's in sycamore that's going around is the original. I turned the second one out of oak, which is this one, which was kind of hard to do. And then I figured out where to get the test tubes. I picked them up on Amazon. Got a box of 48 test tubes for 20 bucks. So if we do stuff on open shop, if you want to come by and turn one, you'll get a test tube to put in here. So I encourage you, if you want to, come by open shop and we'll turn a little bud bass for you. I'll leave that one up there. So the first step in doing this little bud vase is obviously get a chunk of wood that's about 5 inches long, 2 inches in diameter, or 1 3/4. And I've turned this one to round already, but I've set it up on here to kind of show what I use for center points. So I've got a live center with a cup center and just a point sticking out a very little bit. Let me back that off, you can see it in the camera a bit better. So it's like that, and then the center point is pretty much the same. And these are great for spindle turning because they allow the stalk to slip if you get a catch, which is kind of nice. If you do get a catch, then you don't have to have the wood just kind of throw all over the shop. So I do need that light down here, but there we go. So if you have a catch, you can stop, you can loosen this off, you can hold the wood and it still spins. You can crank up the pressure and get that wood from not spinning anymore. So I kind of like that. It's a safety factor when turning. This is my first time using this lathe, so kind of bear with me. Oops, got away from my nose. So I turned most of this project with a skew and a spindle gouge and a small parting tool. I may use a couple of different spindle gouges, but we'll see how it goes. I just wanted to show you a little bit how I turn rough this down and turn the tenon. Although it's already turned, I'll just kind of demonstrate the way I go about it. Yeah, is that all right? Not bad? Yeah, it's a little dusty. I might be able to see a little bit better now. So how many people do a lot of spindle turning? Cliff back there, a few others. See Mike. Yeah. Okay. Good. It's a great little project. It's a quick one. Hopefully this will happen. Get the whole demo done in 40 minutes or so. So we'll get out early. But I haven't done a lot of spindle turning. But I took a class with Alan Lacer last year, I guess. I bought one of his gouges, but I haven't put a handle on it yet. So I just use it unhandled. Let's see, speed is here. Check that. So I typically do a peeling cut, just like this, and just peel. And then I'll tilt it to kind of get a start of the tenon. And I'll clean up the end, if I can get it. I'm a little high. This is such a short lathe for me. Yeah, that's in the way of the camera. There we go. Don't really need to clean up that too much, but I just don't want interference with the chuck jaws. And then to actually cut the dovetail tenon, I use this small tool, which is a spindle gouge. It's sharpened just like a bowl gouge in a one-way jig, and it comes out very pointy with a very sort of steep bevel. That bevel actually turns out to be kind of like a dovetail. So I take this tool, I'll drop this a little bit more, and I just kind of roll this. and tuck it right into the corner there and draw it out, and that's my tenon. So this is pretty much all I use this tool for, is cutting tenons. So we'll leave it like that, and we'll just set it up in a chuck. So pretend I roughed the blank and all that stuff, and that's all done. We'll still need that eventually. Good. And I turned about 4 of these so far, 5. I think one of them kind of failed. It was the wood had a crack in it, but this is a chunk of ash, and I've got a sycamore back here that I had. And the black one that's going around, I think one of the DAW brothers has it there. Dyed that with black dye and then used some cream filler. So they're great projects to experiment your finishing and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to, I'm going to clean up this end because this is going to be the finished end. This tool rest is pretty big. Oops, that's not the power. I'm used to pulling a knob on my Powermatic. Let's see. That's not, okay, that'll work. Not very good. Sometimes this little tool comes in handy. Oops, there we go again, pulling that knob. And just making a little dimple for where the drill bit will sit. This is 13, I wrote it on the box, 1330 seconds. And I was hoping it would be something a bit more standard, but it's just over 3/8 of an inch. They seem to work, it seems to work fairly well. So I want to drill this about 3.5, 3.25, somewhere in there, inches deep. That's about the depth of the test tube, or a little bit more than the test tube. Just going to come an eyeball. Okay, red whip there. That should work. A little sawdust down in there. I'm not going to stick it all the way in because I'll never get it out. Okay. So now, we'll put the cone center on this guy. That is. How many people have lost this little rod? I've lost it a couple times and found it. But, it comes in handy. You know, this isn't working, so I'm going to take this off. My phone decided to not cooperate. It's a little unfortunate. If you guys, I don't know if you were here for the last demo, I had that on. The quality came out pretty well, and the sound was really nice. Wasn't quite as, I think Ken was a little jealous. The sound was a bit better than his. So we'll bring the cone center up and just support the wood as we shape this thing. Now the shape is the pencil, and is really, you know, what I've put on the paperwork is really not, you know, a hard and fast rule. Obviously, shape it how you like. The black one I actually shaped a bit fatter. Didn't mean to, but it turned out more bulbous on the bottom. But the proportions of it are what I would consider. I like the form, and that's something I'm always thinking about when I'm turning. Is does it look nice? You know, does the form flow? Do the curves, you know, flow without interruption and bumps and stuff like that? So that's something to think about. We'll kind of lay this out a little bit. Not really thinking about it too much. So the bottom's going to be down, we'll say right about there. And then about 3/4 of the way up, that'll be the fattest part. And about 5/8 down will be right about there. That'll be the skinniest part, and then that'll be the top. So somewhere along that line is what we'll go for. So we'll see if we get there. I'm not going to measure anything. I don't have calipers for this demo, so we'll just let it work. And a lot of the work I do with the skew, and you'll kind of see the way I proceed with that. We just need to waste away a lot of wood here at the front end, leaving the bulk back here until we get there. I'm just judging this by eye, you know, kind of looking at it that way, and I'm going the wrong way with my taper. So it's a good thing I look at the model. It's roughly about there. Leave that little reference line between that transition right there just to tell me where the top ends, and then I'll kind of work the rest of it a little bit more. I'll define the back end, where it's going to be, just so I know where I'm going to go to and from. The high end is going to be, I'm not going to mark it, so right about, that'll be the high spot. This is a bit fat, so I'll be taking that down a little bit. So the next step is to really kind of start shaping this end of the bulb, and then creating that cove. And that cove is kind of, you know, there was an article in one of the woodwork AAW magazine, I think last year sometime, by Cindy Drozda, talking about, I forget what she was talking about, shape and form mostly in the article. And she talked about how the flowing curves of her finials and stuff, and the proportions that she has on the bulbs, the onions, and the tapers, to her flow like music. So it was kind of an interesting article to read that way, but I found a little bit of interest in that article when I was doing this thing. Is the top of the cove here is obviously a much tighter radius than this down here, and so it kind of lifts it up, and you kind of get that flow. This one's a bit tight, but most of the other ones have a good lip up here, and then the taper just kind of leads up to what's going to come out. So it kind of, I think it all kind of sings, as she would say, a little bit. So that's what I kind of liked about that article. It's a good article. Check it out. I think it was in last fall's, maybe last summer's article. Switch over to try this gouge. I'm going to have to maneuver this tool rest a little bit to get in there. This part that I'm doing now is very similar to the sphere demo that I did two seasons ago or 2 summers ago, turning a sphere by hand without a jig, using that center line of where your ball is going to form, and just using the waste wood to practice and practice and practice. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm getting used to the idea of moving this gouge in this direction and flowing it down towards the taper. Oops, good catch. I got about 1/2 inch of wood right at this point because I've got about 3/8, so it'll maybe about 1/16 on either side of that tube hole. So I can't go much thinner than that, or I'll not have a bud vase anymore. Dulled up that tool a little bit. Just define that a bit better. This gouge I've sharpened with a couple of bevels on it. The first one is kind of the main bevel, obviously, that you use, and it's about 1/8 inch wide all the way around. And then it's got a relief bevel on the back side. this actually allows you to roll a bead in a traditional way, but it also allows you to ride that bevel sideways and sweep a curve this way. And I've swept it back quite a ways so you can actually shear cut with it too, or scrape. So it's kind of versatile that way. We've got to cut this down a bit more. Tuck that end in a little bit. So wood turning, obviously we're taking wood away. So we got to always look for the high spots. And when I'm looking at this piece, obviously I got a bunch of bumps here I got to get rid of. And I've got this bulb a bit too big, and I really want that high spot being about here. So I got to take a bunch away from here. So we're always looking at where the high spots are and taking wood away. I'm turning around 2,300 RPM as it says on this thing, which in this small forum you kind of need the speed, at least from my perspective, my way of turning. So it's really a matter of just touching where the high spots are. You just moving the tool in a different position to get that cut going, to create a nice flowing curve. I back up the tool, just change the attitude slightly, and try again, and again, until I get a cut going. This rest is a bit high, and I wish it was a bit smaller to get closer, but we'll make do. It's getting there. What do you think? Any opinions on the shape? Is it too fat someplace? Is it too shallow at a curve? I think I've got a little ridge on the end of this, at this transition point here. I can smooth that out. I think I've got a flat spot up here, and I got to round this, thin this out a bit more. Everybody kind of see that, I guess? That's one of the things I always do, is critical eye at what I'm turning. You know, whether it's a bowl or a little bud vase, nice flowing curves that meet each other, not at a flat transition, but at a nice smooth, continuously changing radius. So that's something that you know, the old adage is, if it doesn't look good, you know, it's not. It might be useful, but if it doesn't look good, it may not be used. So let's see, where's that again? So I'll use the side of the bevel here and just kind of rub that away. See if I can do this left-handed. You know, this scraping, when you do that kind of scraping with the gouge, this is a good example of what it shows you. I don't know if you can see that shadow or that darker spot right there. I'll mark it with the pencil, but you can see where I'm pointing. That little spot tells me that there's a little divot there in the wood, because I'm scraping away in front of it and behind it, but not right at it. So I know I need to smooth that out. Now it all blends in. See if we can get this side. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to sink in the parting tool a bit further. As I get ready to part this off, and I'm probably not going to part this off tonight, because I'll probably want to finish it at home, but I'll undercut as I part off, so it means I'm cutting into the center of the bowl, so I have a nice little divot there underneath. And I'll part it off down to, you know, a 1/4 inch or maybe a strong 1/8, and then I'll use a handsaw and cut it off. I didn't bring my handsaw with me tonight. A lot of times I'll part things off and hold it with my hand, and that's fine, but this one's a bit long, and it tends to, when I pull this away, when I get down to a 1/4 inch, it tends to wobble quite a bit, so I'd rather just stop it and cut it off. And then I'll turn it around, either sand, carve that off, or I made a little jig here I'll show in a second. I should also show this point that I made as well. Take this cone off. I made a little wooden cone years ago. I forget what for exactly, but it seemed to work well in this thing as well. So it doesn't mar up your wood quite as much, or you don't, you know, chew up your cone center quite as much like I've done. So you can do something like that, and that just sits on top of the threads. It's not threaded on or anything. It's just kind of a 3/4 inch hole on that thing. So at this point, you would sand. I did bring sanding paper, but I'm not going to bother sanding tonight. I'll sand through the grits, and I tend to try and cut this down a little bit thinner, undercutting it a little bit, about there for sanding. And that way, when I'm sanding, I can get my sanding pad, if I had a bit more room here, I can get my sanding pad down to that edge and smooth it off a little bit more. So that's where I would sand. I would sand up to probably 400 grit on this, and then I have started using a vinyl sealer, cut 50/50 with lacquer thinner as a sealing coat. I find it dries quick as a whatever the metaphor is, but it dries really quick, and it leaves a nice surface. And then I sand that back with a little bit of steel wool, and then that's ready to go with whatever sort of finish you want. Whether it's a dye and a paste wax or a lacquer, those kind of things. This is also the time to do any sort of texturing. If you got a spiral tool, you might try some of those there. If you got one of those Wagner knurling tools, I think that might look cool somewhere around here as well. You could do some small V grooves and burn some lines in there. You could do all kinds of different techniques. You could burn it like Jimmy Clues, brush it back and expose that grain. So all kinds of different finishing techniques you might want to try with this quick little project that I don't know how long I took, half an hour. So they're great little projects, and let me show you one last thing about how I would turn this around. So I made this little jam chuck to jam this thing on with, and the way I would go about it is see, I've got this number 1, so that I know it goes on number 1 jaw. I do that so that hopefully I try and get it to run as true as I can when I rechuck it every time. So if you're doing jam chucks and stuff like that, to get them to try and run as true as you can, mark them, what jaw goes where. I find it helps me to be able to get something that you remount over and over again to run as true as it did the first time you made it. So it's got a little bit of a wobble, but not bad. But it's a nice, tight, snug fit for that 30 seconds drill hole. And I would bring up the tailstock. I'm pretending that this was already cut off. Let me put on this other one just to show you. This one's a bit smaller than the other ones, but I would bring it up. I'm not going to poke it, but I would bring up the tailstock to support here, and then that would allow me just to get that last little bit right up to as close as I could. I'd actually have the point cone center on there, not that. Oh, it's over there. I would have this guy on here, just so that it could get closer. So that way I could get, if I'd sunk that in there, I could get close down to that point, and I can cut it down to where I've only got a 1/16 inch little nub at the end. And then that's easy enough to carve off even with a chisel or with another carving tool. So you can do something like that. The other way, easier or safer way, is just carve it off, sand it off, whatever you want to do. I have a feeling I might break this guy. There we go. So that's basically the demo. Any questions? Yeah. Yep. That's just the center line of the drawing. Yeah. No. I did the drawing in a CAD program, and those bottom lines actually didn't meet very well, but it's just the center line of how I rotated the form in the CAD program. So. But that's it, little weed pot, short and sweet. Yes, Charlie. Well, I think at this point I'm not. I'm just going to use it the way I've been using it for the last year and a half, just like that. It's short enough anyway. I use it really short like this anyway. So I don't know that I'll put a handle on it. I may at some point, but yeah. Yeah, I brought my big skew, which I've put a handle on, and Ken, you want to go to the overhead for a second? So it has a square tang, square profile on it, and the tang is rectangular in shape. And so I've taken a dowel that I've turned on the lathe and just cut it on the bandsaw. I use those little screw clamps, the wooden ones. Hold the dowel with that and run it through the bandsaw. laying flat on the table. And I take sandpaper, I cut a strip out of the middle of the dowel that kind of mimics this thickness. And then just epoxy it in there. So I would probably do the same thing with the lacer tool. It's thicker this way than it is this way, so might put little wedges on the side here and wedge it in there. I just haven't bothered because I find it actually quite comfortable to use like this because I'm mostly using it like this with my hand. When I turned this thing, I was up this close with it, so I don't know that I'll put a handle on it, Charlie. So it's worked fine for me just the way it is. Any other questions? Yes, Mark. When I used the skew just to get rid of a lot of waste wood at this point in here. I took this down to about this diameter and then this stuff in here. The skew, I'm not quite good enough to do flowing curves like this with the skew. I'm trying it a bit more and more, but haven't gotten there. But I'm starting. I can turn beads and stuff with the skew. I could have turned this thing, this bulbous part with the skew, but I can't do this reverse curve yet with the skew. So not that well anyway. So I choose to use my spindle gouge. I'm a little fat right here. I have to read my. Anyway, yeah. So I'm using the skew more and more. In fact, all these blanks, every one I turn from square to round, I use the big skew. And just like I was doing there, I just peel it away. I hardly touch my roughing gouge anymore. Any other questions? Good. Thanks very much.